So the plans are being set up for a voluntary departure of Palestinians. Now, when media reports on this, they always put voluntary departure in quotes, which I don't exactly understand why. My understanding is that it is truly voluntary, and as well as Gazans do want to leave voluntarily, at least some. So I have no idea why that would be something that you sort of want to imply that this is somewhat being pushed on people. Now, involuntary deportation was something we have been talking about, but this is not what Israel is doing right now. Basically, the government or the cabinet has approved, among other things, basically, it's going to be under Israel cuts, so under the defense ministry, where basically there is a separate agency being set up, or sort of agency under defense ministry being set up, that will handle this departure of Palestinians. So sort of like setting up the routes, also contacting the nations, because the big part of it is there need to be nations who do want to take them in. Now, if that is going to be Egypt, I think just recently Trump has pretty much gave, you could say, an ultimatum to Egypt that they can either take them or not, whatever that means. It's important to remember Egypt is one of the biggest recipient of foreign aid of America, I think in top five. So I'm not sure if they will be threatened with that. But basically, it might be Egypt, it might be all the Middle Eastern nations, it might be just some even other nations. Again, even if all of the Gazans were forced to get out, or needed to get out, or even wanted to get out, at the very top, it would be 2 million people. Most likely, it would be a bit less. But even if it was two people, that is not any sort of refugee crisis we haven't dealt with in the past, especially if people really do like Palestinians, they should be willing to. I think it shouldn't be that hard to convince nations to take them. So that's what we'll be discussing today. We're supposed to have also Alex joining us, but apparently there are sirens in Israel. So I hope she stays safe. And anybody else who's listening from Israeli shelters, hopefully you guys are safe. And I haven't seen anything yet about what has happened. So hopefully everything is safe, and we'll report if something does happen. Joining me today is Michael Kaufman. Welcome to the reality show. And Michael, what do you make of what do you make of this decision? This is something that has been talked about in the past, but now it's finally sort of approved and is being actually set up.
Yeah, I'm smiling. I mean, I should just update quickly. I just saw on Ynet News, it is as Daniel and I were discussing before we started, it is a Houthi missile. Most likely it was taken out over the ocean or way prior to entering Israeli airspace. And I believe with standard operating procedure for the Israeli army is that they put broad missile sirens across Israel so that people are not hit with shrapnel or breakdown products from the anti-missile collision, which can leave some pretty big pieces of missile. Remember, these are pretty big missiles. They have a long way to go. And obviously the U.S. needs to keep pounding the Houthis because they don't seem to get it. But as Donald Trump says, that if they want to be annihilated, the U.S. will be happy to oblige. As far as the voluntary, it's absolutely voluntary at this point. It is classic for the press and the media, for some reason, to defend a bunch of people who didn't lift one finger to defend any of the hostages or do anything in favor of the hostages, never mind their support for UNRWA and for Hamas in general. But as is expected, Trump is a very good deal maker. And what he said not long after he took office as president of the U.S., he said that he thought that Gaza could not exist. It's a disaster, obviously. It's been pummeled. It's actually getting more pummeled now because Hamas will not back down. And Israel continues to destroy it. So people have the opportunity to leave. I think the big point to remember is the real point of having careful checkpoints leaving Gaza is to nail the Hamas people trying to escape from Gaza. And everybody's focused on making sure the so-called good people, and I implied already that I have an issue with that, but the people that are not direct military personnel right now and not terrorists at the moment, who are not directly going to harm Israelis, that they have a passage out and can go to some other country, most likely Egypt. By the way, there's a ton of space in Egypt. There's a whole lot of unsettled area. The Sinai, which Israel gave back to Egypt after Egypt lost it in a war that Egypt started. But there's plenty of room, and of course the U.S. will be underwriting a lot of the cost to how these people initially, not only with the current support for Egypt that the U.S. has, which is a lot, but probably additional support if I had to guess. I think it's terrific.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to sort of them being in Egypt, and something you pointed out is exactly the idea that we would let sort of Hamas get out. It's important to remember that Israel in the past was already controlling all of Gaza and all of the West Bank. PLO was not in Israel or anywhere close, but it was jumping between Lebanon, between Jordan. So the important part is also not let terrorists get out and sort of just reestablish themselves in some bordering countries. I mean, Turkey, for example, had I think there is evidence showing that they helped train some of the Hamas members. So it's also important to maybe put them like in Morocco or Indonesia, some Muslim country that is a bit further away. But joining us today is also Razi, and I'm seeing that some people in the chat are saying they got out of the shelter, so hopefully it wasn't too bad. But yeah,
Yeah.
Razi, do you make
Hey
of this?
Daniel, hey Michael. Yeah, we don't have yet any sirens here in London. I'm sure that'll come. But Alex also says that there's a warning of infiltration of terrorists. So hopefully that
Ooh.
either isn't the case or they will be quickly sent to meet their virgins. But yeah, this whole issue with first of all, of course it's voluntary, and of course it shouldn't be. Like you don't get to to decide what happens after you do something like October 7th. So that's my problem. And I've said the way to look at Trump's plan is in the context of U.S. presidential peace plans for the Middle East. And in that context, it's by far the best thing ever because it is actually a step forward, whereas all the past ones were steps backwards. Now, in the way he presented it, I immediately had an issue with, Gaza is terrible. We're going to build something for them. They're going to live a wonderful life. I don't want them to live. Look, they shouldn't be rewarded for October 7th. So that's where my issues are with this. But again, removing the population from Gaza is a step towards actual maybe peace in the Middle East. Now, the point you made, Daniel, about terrorists getting out, yes, they will get out. Just like when Israel moves the population in Gaza from one place to another because they're fighting in that one place, the terrorists are among the population that gets out. Some of the senior officials that Israel has taken out in recent days were taken out at the heart of one of these tent cities, and uh, so yeah, we know that terrorists will escape if you let some of the population out, and that's something that Israel has to think about and figure out how to not let it happen. These terrorists will figure out a way to attack Israel or attack Israelis abroad or attack Jews or whatever. They will continue their ways elsewhere. So yeah, as much as possible, if Israel can get rid of actual terrorists before kicking them out, that would be great.
Yeah, and the big question here is also, it is voluntary, but what happens if they don't leave? If either not enough leave or they simply do not want. Now, Israel has said that in the survey, it says that 50% of Gazans want to leave. And when you control for academically educated Gazans, it actually jumps up to 90%. So overwhelmingly, especially educated, do want to leave. Now, I don't know exactly where they got this number from. I couldn't verify it. The last one I've seen from the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, but this one was done in like June 24, was like 33%. Now that could have easily jumped to 50%. So it could actually be the case that yeah, 50% do want to leave. But the question is, okay, but what then? The biggest problem is we still don't really know what is the plan for Gaza. Is America really gonna like take over it? Is Israel going to be the one taking over it? Are we letting Hamas stay? Are we letting Palestinians stay and then give it to PA afterwards? We still do not have. And the number of Palestinians that will get out of Gaza, I think, will highly influence what will happen. I mean, Michael, what do you make of? Yeah, this is like a good plan, but we still have no idea what's really going to happen afterwards.
Yeah, but look, this is like predicting the weather in 2 months. And I don't mean the weather in Israel, because we know what the weather in Israel in 2 months. It'll be the same as in 3 and 4 months, only hotter. It's like predicting it in the Northeast in America, where every day it changes and every 3, 4 hours it can change. It, I think Trump probably and team probably have a plan. I think this is the beginning of the plan that he talked about before. But as we all say in war, plans survive until the first bullet is shot, and then you kind of have to go with it. If you, I think you guys have been. I mean, I know Razi, you have. I think Daniel, you've probably been to Ashdod and Ashkelon. As you move down the south coast of the Mediterranean, it's this gorgeous area. I mean, Trump wasn't really kidding that much when he said it could have been a Riviera. Ashkelon, which is I think the largest big city, the largest city closest to Gaza, the largest one on the ocean, on the sea. It's gorgeous. I mean, and it gets better as you go south. So I could well imagine that people are removed, that it's going to be leveled. I mean, the place is pretty leveled as it is for the most part. The infrastructure, except for the tunnel infrastructure, which is, of course, world class, although many are now filled in, the place needs to be rebuilt, modernized, and it could well, I don't think I'm smoking something if I would say under Israeli or American oversight, it could really turn into a vacation spot. I mean, this is gorgeous land.
Razi?
Yes, I completely agree. Let's do it. And yeah, Ashkelon, by the way, I was born in Ashkelon in a hospital that was I think hit like twice during this war. So yeah. First let's get rid of the problems in Gaza, and then by the way, even you say it's pretty much level, but even the buildings that are still up, here in London, for the Olympics in 2012, as they do everywhere, they built the Olympic Village, they built the housing for the athletes, and then they turned it into apartments and sold them. I don't think you can do that with current Gaza housing, even if it's still standing. So the place does need to be leveled and rebuilt. And yeah, if America actually follows that policy, that'd be great. With Witkoff, with Trump, you never know. With Witkoff, you also never know. And I'm still wondering. He said something like Hamas wants to live or something, some crazy shit on Tucker Carlson, which I'm still waiting for sources, like his sources on Hamas wanting to live, not being ideologically whatever it was, and. Again, this is an organization that we're not we're not asking people watching this channel to take our word for what Hamas is. Watch their own live streaming of themselves doing what they do. That is Hamas. And if Steve Witkoff can't figure it out, I am concerned about the Middle East, but not as concerned as I was under the previous administration.
Yeah, if I could just add on to that, I mean, Witkoff I think he's trying to compete with Blinken for stupidity. I saw another quote recently where he said that he thinks he was duped by Hamas into believing that Hamas actually wanted to do a deal. Now, first of all, he was duped, but you don't tell everybody that you're an idiot publicly. First of all, we know he's an idiot for even listening to them, but you make up some story and you get your shit together, or frankly, he should resign and get somebody in there that understands that we're dealing with murderous animals and they need to be eliminated, period, and not treated like people. It's extremely amazing to me that Donald Trump, who put, some of the most militant and tough Israeli defenders all around him, Marco Rubio et al., Hegseth, and so on, and he's got this flake. Witkoff has shown himself to be a flake at this point, and he's making the same mistakes that Blinken, who was completely ineffectual, probably worse in the war actually, is making, and it's shocking. I agree with you, Razi.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to especially with well, first of all, something we need to do with politicians is there are no mistakes. You do not have a once you get to this point, like CEOs don't make mistakes. Like when you get to that position, you cannot afford to make mistakes. You are either correct or you're being fired. That's the only thing that's going on. And that's my sort of biggest problem with specifically Witkoff, because again, he's the special envoy to the Middle East. And this is also what I'm worried about with Trump's policy, because I think I posed this question to James yesterday. Do you guys know who was the special envoy to Middle East for Biden? I don't know, because it was Secretary Blinken who was dealing with all the negotiations. Why is Marco Rubio not dealing with the negotiations and with the policy on Hamas? Even when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, why is Steve Witkoff arguing or sort of debating the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine? Why is it not Secretary Rubio? Again, we have Trump administration for me has very few good things. Marco Rubio is one of them. He's not doing anything. He is not, when it comes to Trump's cabinet, when it comes to any president's cabinet, it's pretty much whatever Trump wants someone to do, that person will do it. And the fact is that Trump is not putting Marco Rubio in charge of this. He is putting Steve Witkoff in charge of this. After all of these, it's still him. And this is what's really scaring me about basically what will happen. And especially, I don't know how much they really agree on everything or how much they talk. Steve Witkoff was going on and on about how much, they talk with Trump about what's going to happen. And at some point he made some comment about we do not want, people are saying we want to build Riviera or something. We don't want to do that. And then I'm again listening. I mean, Trump literally posted a video, an AI generative video of Gaza being a Riviera, which was kind of weird, but okay. And now we're again getting a different message. So this is what I'm most worried about, even when it comes to the fact that there is no and again, even when it comes to sort of what will happen in Gaza, I do not expect one point to one point exactly what will happen, but sort of this general of will it be Israel, will it be America, or will it be the Palestinian Authority? That I think that overarching theme needs to happen before we can see what will happen. Razi?
Yeah, and again, a concern if it is America is that the next president will be, I don't know, an AOC or somebody who then makes it a Palestinian state on the spot. So that there are concerns there, but again, removing the population, there is no way forward with Gazans remaining in Gaza. That's step one. Thank you, Christian, for the super chat. Christian says, off topic, but what is your stance on the sacking of Ronen Bar? Personally, I totally agree with it. And Qatargate, an advisor of Bibi, apparently got money from Qatar. So I follow the news from Israel, but it's very difficult to follow the news from Israel because it's so ideologically, I don't even want to call it ideology. It's so political camp motivated that it's nearly impossible. I mean, I can barely watch Israeli left-wing news channels anymore. And I say that as somebody who can kind of tolerate American ones just as a source of information, at least on where the left stands. But also the right-wing Israeli channel, I kind of like that it's not anti-Israel, but I don't trust it as a source of information. So having said all that, I support firing everybody who was in a position of power on October 7th, starting with the prime minister and going down to all these people. So yes, I am 100% in favor of it.
Yeah, I'll go to you, Michael. I'll just mention also on that thing. Yeah, it's especially if you do not live in a certain country, watching like the super political stuff, like when it comes to like specific people being in charge, is super hard to follow, if not impossible. That's when even when the judicial reform was happening in Israel, like when I've seen parts of it, it's like, okay, I couldn't understand where they're going with this, but like I cannot see it for anything else than like super politically motivated, and that's sort of like the biggest problem whenever it comes to any sort of like change in the system itself. But yeah, Michael, anything to add?
Yeah, a couple of comments. First of all, I wouldn't get too nuts about the daily, baloney that goes on and people yapping. It's pretty clear that Witkoff is a flake. I mean, it's going to take a long time for him to recover any sort of professionalism, and I would hope that if he doesn't straighten up real quick, Trump will get rid of him, because you can't make that many mistakes that quickly, especially mistakes that the other side, meaning Biden and his team, already made. Treating Hamas like they're actual people and saying, you're shocked that terrorists don't negotiate in good faith. It's like, did you read the sentence you just said? That was, by the way, that was a Blinken comment. But basically, that's what Witkoff is saying. So I wouldn't get too excited about that. I think the long-term issues are, I agree with you all. Look, Gaza obviously belongs to Israel. I mean, if you look at the map, it makes no sense that there's this little island of Gaza stuck in there on the bottom left side of Israel. It's just ridiculous. It used to be part of Egypt, I guess, and then Egypt attacked Israel, and so Israel got that in Sinai, and then they put all these people in Gaza, which is artificial. And the Gazans had a chance, and they used their chance, and they basically screwed it all up and shot all over it. But I wouldn't get too excited about that. I think it'll have to come down to America or Israel. I hope it goes to Israel because I think Israel could do a lot for tourism. I think it could do a lot for the country, and certainly security-wise, it's a no-brainer. And finally, Israel will have to control the Philadelphia corridor. I'm sure if you asked all the Hamasniks who are protesting on the college campuses what the Philadelphia corridor is, they're going to tell you it's a part of Pennsylvania. But it's really important because most, if not all of the weapons, essentially all of the weapons that were smuggled into Gaza came through Egypt. Israel's friend and peace treaty with Egypt allowed all that in through the extensive tunnel system. So Israel has to control that border, and it would be far better if they controlled the whole area. As far as Ronan Bar, I mean, the timing is odd for sure, but I completely agree with Razi. I mean, and Netanyahu should be gone as well at this point. It is inconceivable how anybody who was responsible for any facet of intelligence is still working in Israel. I mean, this was a colossal screw up, and this is way worse than 9/11 screw ups. And I say that because you knew where it was coming from. 9/11 was a complete failure of the American intelligence organization. We had warnings. We had, again, women that knew that there were people that were getting trained on how to fly planes, but not how to land them. There were all kinds of issues, but we didn't really know where it was going to happen. Everybody knew that an attack was going to come from Gaza, or could very well come from Gaza, or the West Bank, or Hezbollah. There are three places abutting Israel. So this was such a colossal screw up, and the number of things that have already come out, even though the October 7th reports to date have been, hardly comprehensive and not really believable in their terms of their holisticness, if that's a word. He needs to go. Whether it's because of around Qatar date or that was the excuse, we can discuss that separately. But I'm very glad to see him gone, and I think a lot of the rest should be fired.
Yeah, now, I mean, even when it comes to the fact that sort of they knew the attack was going to happen on Israel, I mean, even if it wasn't like specifically October 7th, I mean, you're living next to terrorist organization. You're living next to Hezbollah, whose whole purpose, the whole reason Hezbollah was set up is to destroy Israel. That is their goal. That is their only and number one goal. And it is very similar to Hamas. It is very similar to the even the ideology of the Palestinian people that they want to destroy Israel. That is the main thing. And you have to be not even ready for them to attack. You need to attack first. You need to let them know that you're not going to wait for them to just attack. Now, some people in the chat are talking about how, the prime minister is the one being elected, and if people do not want him, they can vote him out. I think Israel has a very not ideal political system. The idea that you just have one parliament, very small parliament, it's one cameral, so you don't have like a separation of like a Senate and House like in the US. The fact that president pretty much has no power. The fact that you do elect like one government and they have this like absolute power almost. I think Israel should want to have a bit more sort of checks and balances when it comes to system. So I don't think people should argue that, well, one guy got elected, so now he's like this like king who can just do whatever he wants, and we should accept it. There should be some checks and balances, and Israel is one nation that doesn't really have it that well. That's why, when they started going after the judiciary, I'm like, well, that's one thing that's sort of like a separate from the political system. And the idea that you would want it more politicized, while I do understand some of the arguments, is, again, sort of scary when it comes to, again, because once the other guys take power, they'll have all that like absolute power to take against you. Razi?
Yeah, with the judicial reform, we talked about it in the past. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the future, but long story short, the problems that they're pointing at are real, and their solution is the exact opposite of the solution that you would want. That's the issue there. Michael, there are parts of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that if you look at them, you can understand why somebody would be confused. So
it's called North Philly, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
A few people in the context of sources mention JNS TV, I-24 News. Yeah, JNS is good, but it's commentary. That's not a news channel. And I-24 is a news channel. It's on its way up, so I do watch it sometimes. I prefer it to all the left-wing channels. And I did want to comment on the Light Life saying that the prime minister was elected. There will be a new election if people want to vote him out. So I agree, but the Israeli system also allows parliament to remove the prime minister even without an election or call a new election. So it is possible within the current system to get rid of the prime minister, and that should have been done immediately. I mean, he should have been removed, and somebody else with the same government, no new elections, same coalition, somebody else is the new prime minister, and basically fixes the problems that Netanyahu has caused. But no, he should be gone. And by the way, if it's in an election, I'm worried about what the alternative might be. But just in terms of him, considering his job performance, he does not deserve to stay there.
Yeah, and just to add, someone says there's way too much power in the judicial branch. I really liked what one of the founding fathers said about sort of the judicial branch, and it is the least dangerous branch because it can only stop things from happening. Again, I think I'd rather have a powerful judicial branch than sort of like have one election that decides all of it, and the changes the sort of Netanyahu's government suggested for the judicial branch would pretty much make it completely like a political thing. So again, that is not a good thing. Sort of going after the ends and like mowing down mowing down through all of the means sets you on the dangerous path that again will be impossible to get rid of. Once a certain political system is entrenched, it's super hard to change that.
It's worth remembering that I think a lot of us are used to having a constitution in place. That is the document that constituted, that brought together the government. I'm pretty sure Israel had its after its declaration of independence, which it did have, beautiful, didn't bother to write a constitution and ends up with a hodgepodge of laws that have not really set up much of anything. And I understand the point that some people think the judicial branch has too much power, but part of the problem is that they don't have a document to rely on. And so what happens is laws get made, and a lot of times it's dictatorship of the majority. I mean, at least in America, the Constitution was set up, and the judicial branch in particular was set up to make sure that there was not dictatorship of the majority. If the majority of people say that the world is flat and that becomes a law, that doesn't make it right. And the minority opinion does matter. In the US, and I believe in the UK, you have two houses of Congress or two houses of parliament. And you have basically you have one that represents the population by numbers, and the other one which is a straight voting, like we do with our House of Representatives, which is much bigger, of course, by the population, and we have the Senate, which is two senators from each state. So there's no such thing like as this in Israel, and also as Daniel pointed out, there is no second group. There's the Knesset, and that's it. So there's no, and the Knesset pretty much votes along party lines, which sounds to me like dictatorship of the majority. So the notion that the majority can just decide stuff and that makes it right is absolutely antithetical to all of the Western democracies that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and just to point on Israel's constitution, I mean the committee, whatever it was called, the thing that ended up being the Knesset, was tasked with writing a constitution. But at that time, it did look like labor was never going to not be in power. And if you're going to be in power forever, and you're being offered restrictions on your power, you might not jump on it, especially if you're of the views that labor was. So yeah, the ruling party in Israel didn't want a constitution restricting it, and we're paying for it now.
Yeah, and just
And I agree also on the two houses of parliament. Israel needs two houses of parliament, like the US, not like the UK, where one house of parliament is not elected. But yeah, I think any system should have two houses of parliament. Makes it more difficult to get things through.
Yeah, and also on the sort of American thing, I think the biggest advantage that America had when it comes to constitution is it was written by the founding fathers. I mean, we didn't have better politicians pretty much ever in the and better historians, because it was also, and it's pretty short. You can easily read it in one reading and understand it. And also it has the system. I mean, I once told it, I think to James, but imagine saying this to, if there are Europeans here, imagine hearing this. Imagine people really be wanting something, and they elect a Congress, and it's bipartisan support for something, for some law, and then it goes through Senate, and then your president signs it, and then some five guys in some building somewhere say, no, this is unconstitutional, and everybody goes, okay, that's fair enough, it's unconstitutional, so we will no longer support it. That is like, that doesn't exist anywhere in the world besides America. The fact that people like acknowledge the Supreme Court and say, okay, if it goes against the Constitution, it's wrong and we need to like do something different. And that is something that pretty much no other country has, and we will not see, unfortunately, for a long time. We have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says, Razi, I am back in the woke UK. Anything you want to say on that?
Welcome back, PC. Hopefully, we'll see you at some point at one of our events. Maybe we do. I don't know what your name is, so I don't know if we have seen you. But yeah, look, the UK, it's going in a certain direction. So I'm not sure if it's a great idea to come back, but I don't think we're completely over yet. Yeah, Victoria says South Africa has a constitution, hasn't helped it. Yeah, look, of course, it's also the content of that constitution that matters, and yeah, bad countries can have constitutions, but
Mm, But it's also the political culture. I mean, we have a constitution in Slovakia. We have a constitutional court. At one point, pretty much the government we had since they got elected, they passed everything through extra parliamentary process, meaning basically they just rammed everything through one reading. And one of those things got into constitutional court, and they were like, "Yeah, they're not supposed to do it like that, but we'll let it go through." And it's like, yeah, when your system is basically like constitutional court doesn't even care about what's really going on, that then it of course matters. Like that requires political culture is also like a big part of any nation. Now, someone was asking why Rubio is not intervening by himself instead of Witkoff, or basically why is
That was
sort of
you. You were asking that.
uh,
And somebody in the chat followed up, but that was
but
Joel.
they said, Razi, you raised the question
I
without
saw
an
that they
answer.
said Razi, but it was actually Daniel. But thanks for giving me credit for.
I mean, you'd have to ask Trump for that. Again, Trump has a complete power over his cabinet. He can dismiss anybody for anything. Appointing people is a bit harder, but pretty much usually the same or as easy. Usually it just goes through the Senate pretty easily. But basically, you'd have to ask him why is he not having his Secretary of State dealing with both situation in Gaza and situation in Ukraine. I don't know. I don't know why he would do that. But sort of going into, I have one more topic if you guys want to jump to that, or if you guys have anything.
Of course, I don't know either, but Rubio is certainly, he's on the news all the time, and he's certainly involved in the discussions. I don't know if it's because Trump wants him at home to field the increasingly hostile legacy media, who really knows how to run a country because they've done such a great job, the media. But that may be part of it. I'm sure he has a plan, but I don't think Marco Rubio is not involved in the strategy. The execution obviously is concerning. We'll have to see. Luckily, Trump is not really a patient guy, so I would imagine that Witkoff either is going to get his act together, or he's not going to be in the job very long.
Well, let's move to settlements. Besides the voluntary departure of Gazans, there was another thing approved. There was a proposal by the Minister Bezalel Smotrich to basically separate the 13 settlements in the West Bank from their parent communities and work toward recognizing them as independent municipalities, meaning they will be basically a bit more autonomous, a bit more free to sort of deal with their own things. And basically, they would be sort of an actual or another step forward towards being an actual part of Israel rather than this sort of like a separate entity in Judea and Samaria. Since you guys know a bit more about Israel and settlements, I'll go to you. Michael, what do you make of this decision?
Look, if you've been to this quasi, uh, governed area, and I've been only through it twice in transit, it just can't stay this way. I mean, this is an unstable situation, and it needs to get real. And also, this notion that these places are settlements, which is possibly the stupidest English word you could have picked for these. These are real towns. I mean, these are places with schools and community centers and synagogues and houses and plumbing and electricity and sewage, etc. These are not, it's not like somebody went and pitched a couple of tents and dug a hole. And it's an infuriating word. I mean, some of the nicest settlements in Israel are prettier than most towns in America. It really, it's a classic Israeli PR screw up. It just dumb. And I think if you say a town should have its own jurisdiction versus saying a settlement should have its own jurisdiction, it's a different discussion. Of course, a town should have its jurisdiction. At least in America, our towns have their own jurisdiction, and they get to make certain decisions, and they get to figure out traffic patterns and zoning laws and so on and so forth. They receive a specific allocation from the bigger governments, either the state government or the local government, and so on and so forth. It's nuts. I'm glad that this is coming to a, fish or cut bait. Let's yes or no. Enough of this kind of media. We're kind of pretending that someday these areas are going to go back to someone. It's sort of an apologist attitude, and it needs to stop. Might makes right. They're on the land. You're done with it. Take the land.
Razi?
Yeah, I fully support obviously this decision, and it's look, some of these are very small villages, but yeah, the reason they use Michael, the reason they use the word settlement is shorthand for illegal settlement. You know, that's what they mean by it. And yeah, that's why if it is one of those so-called outposts, you know, where it's just sometimes a few teenagers, you know, taking over a hill, or if it's Ariel, somebody mentioned here, which is a proper city. Um, yeah, it is the right thing for Israel to do to support those settlements to ensure. Now, the way Israel does it, I don't necessarily agree with it, um, because government is very much involved. But uh, on the other hand, you know, in a sense, government should be involved in what goes on in the West Bank because of the ongoing threat. And look, when we talk about long-term Gaza, the Gazans can't stay in Gaza. The same is true of the West Bank. Maybe we have to wait until the next October 7th comes from the West Bank for Israel to realize it. But that is a part of it. And um, unfortunately, in the way, you know, politics and international relations work, um, yeah, the more kind of facts on the ground you have, if you have, you know, another few 100,000 people there, the more difficult it will be to argue, you know, the kind of involuntary relocation that people in the world support, which is the involuntary relocation of Jewish so-called settlers back into Israel.
Yeah, I mean, well, something to first point out, because Michael said Mike might makes right, and Bonnie pointed it out in the chat. It's it's a problematic statement since it applies that basically if you do something by force, it makes it okay. But I think what is more meant is the fact that Palestinians have started a war against Israel. They've lost it. They lost any sort of legitimacy when it comes to sort of any ownership of land that you could make. And I think once a nation basically tries to eradicate other nation, all legitimacy for its existence is completely wiped out. And if afterwards the other nation that got attacked will take over or will just occupy it, or and then sort of give it back like we did with Germany, that's pretty much on the purview of the nation. That is still sort of the right way to do it. And I think the way Israel has backed out of Gaza and certain parts of the West Bank was, I think, wrong. And yeah, I agree with sort of Razi's that government is way too much involved with these settlements. My favorite piece of American legislation, I might be exaggerating a bit, but was the Homesteading Act, where basically in I think 1860s there was some land in the West, and the government said, "Hey, you guys can go there, and if you build a house, you know what? You own that land." And that was, I think, the best example of sort of how property rights should be set up. Basically saying, starting a race, basically people can go and set up. And if you set it up, we'll defend you. We'll we'll send a sheriff there at some point once it becomes a town. And that for some part should be basically what should be done in the West Bank. I mean, you have to remember many of the places that these new settlements are being set up were empty. Palestinians were not living there. Palestinians are now trying to live there to the so-called take back the land. But no, it should be mostly, hey, it shouldn't be like permits and, you know, you have to like go through the government to do it. But hey, at the most, it should be basically announcing the government, hey, I'm gonna set up a land there, and maybe if you wanna send soldiers by every day or so, just so we're secure. I think that should be the way it should be done.
I
Yeah,
just want to, yeah,
sorry.
Michael, go ahead.
I just want to, because I think, look, Bonnie, I understand your point, and I understand Daniel's point that it's a problematic statement. I would submit to you all this, but pragmatically speaking, on the planet we live in, and I think this is directly addressing the problem with the Russia-Ukraine war, is might makes right until there's a policeman who actually does the quote right thing, and then we can have a democratic discussion on what the right thing is to do. But unless there is some adjudicator or some policeman to make sure that might doesn't make right. Unfortunately, I think might does make right. It does end up being the arbiter of a lot of this stuff. And I think one of the troubles we have in the world today is that Russia is a second or third largest nuclear power in the world, and we have a crazy psychopath running the country who has probably wouldn't have a lot of trouble sending a small nuclear bomb somewhere. And I think that's the thin line. That's a tough line that we have to walk when we're dealing with it. I think in the Middle East, we all know that a lot of what happens in the Middle East, it isn't really by a nice democratic process. It's unfortunately strength. And I don't like it. I'm with you. I'm a hugely in favor of the brain over the brawn, but I think you need to have a policeman. And that's where the statement came from.
Yeah, I think, well, even the sort of the idea that democratically sort of doing something, that is also might makes right. That is also that basically because a bunch of us agree on something that makes it, I think sort of the might makes right. The problem with that is that calling something right means it's good. The fact that you can sort of take over something or get someone, again, doesn't make it, yeah, I mean, by the factor of what force is, if you can force something on someone, that you forced it on someone, but it doesn't make it right. It's sort
Yeah.
of like might makes might.
Yeah,
Basically,
it's
that's what it
basically
is.
the problem is the word right there, as in it's evaluative rather than factual. I mean, Russia's might, will likely it will likely end up with the eastern provinces. It doesn't make it right. It just makes it
Fair
factual.
point. And when I said right, I mean it's what happens, and history gets written by the victors. But I'm a huge life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, Ayn Randian. So I completely agree. Poor choice of word, but Mike makes what ends up happening is often, unfortunately, due to the person with the bigger fist.
Yeah,
Better?
um, that is true.
Good.
Thank you, Bronx guy, for the super chat. Uh, who was it that mentioned that somebody mentioned that 90% of all land in Israel was owned by the government. Oh, actually, there's another super chat. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. Uh, yeah, that's the thing. In Israel, housing in Israel is a very, very problematic market, even compared to elsewhere. And it's done badly. Now, with the settlements, it's a mixture of housing policy and security policy. But yes, I mean, I would, whatever tax breaks you get for building in the settlements, I would happily expand to the rest of the country and do away with the subsidies and instead just make sure that people living in Jews living in Judea, Samaria, or non-Jewish Israelis, uh, or in the future in Gaza, live in peace and security, actual peace and security, not the imaginary tale that we hear from the left.
Yeah, and just quickly on that statement, because I think it's also the way it's used is a bit dishonest. Well, yeah, there should be no sort of publicly owned land or state-owned land. The fact is that a lot of Israel is not really habitable. If you go to the south, to the Negev, that's not really like a land. Even if it was like privately owned, it's not like anybody would necessarily even automatically like go there. So I think it's trying to overstate it a bit.
No, because habitable land is owned by the government, and the Negev, I think, is part of the issue. There is, much of it is used for military exercises and stuff. I think some of it would probably still have to be government owned in Israel at the moment.
Well,
But yeah,
government can lease it from individuals if they want.
what?
Government can lease it from individuals
Yeah,
if it
that's
wants.
that's also true. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says they don't want Jews there, same as in East Jerusalem. I dislike the word settlers. Yeah, settlers is one of those words. I mean, some settlers love the word settlers, by the way. They use it, and they're happy with it. But yeah, we know why it's used the way it's used in the West and uh, or by anti-Israel people. We know what they mean by it. Thank you, Ori, for the super chat as well.
Yeah, with that, I don't have that much more to add on this topic. I think when it comes to Gaza, seeing the voluntary deportation is good. At least it's a sort of a move in the right direction. Even when it comes to again, I think it was like 13 settlements. Now, my understanding is there's about like 150, so it is not as big of a step as I would, I think, want it to be, as well as there is also like 100 outposts or so. So yeah, we still have ways to go, but this is again sort of a another example of sort of going in the right direction, and we need to demand more of it, and we need to expect more, and we should hope for more. With that, Michael, any last thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, I think it's great to see that Israel seems to be prioritizing destroying Hamas. Hopefully that gets the hostages back, but I'm personally a lot more worried about future Hamas attacks on Israel and killing a lot more Israelis. I'll remind everyone before I close that Sinwar was not only saved in an Israeli hospital with a big brain operation, but was then released in one of these terrorist trade deals, these horrendous terrorist trade deals, and came back and killed 1,200 plus Israelis, plus all the soldiers that have died defending Israel, plus the 250 hostages and so on. This is not a policy that should ever continue. And I'm glad to see that Israel's trying to destroy those people that would annihilate them. Michael Kaufman, 2Fs, LinkedIn.
We have a Razi? Oh, we have a super chat from Christian. Thank you so much. He says a settler is anyone who is not a nomad. Thank you so much. And a super chat or a Bonnie has been a member for 34 months, and she said she was not able to put this in this chat, but she said trying to say might does make right when it's retaliatory, something Israel doesn't fully understand. I mean, the problem with any sort of like idiom or with any sort of like this short thing, it's they usually don't have enough context to like actually, to like make them philosophically like fully consistent. Yeah, basically, when you are at war, the right thing to do is to finish that war as soon as possible. Now that might sometimes good countries can lose, and sometimes good countries can win and do the occupation afterwards improperly, and sometimes they can start the winning and then refuse to actually finish what needs to be done. Razi, where can people find you, and last thoughts?
Yeah, Christian, yeah, that's a good definition. Good luck getting it approved as the official UN definition. Thank you, PC, for a last minute super chat. PC says, doubt they will get anyone else out now. Look, if I come up with some ambitious growth plan for ARCUK where next year, our budget will grow to $10 million a year, and part of it is implemented and we become a $1 million a year organization. That's still massive growth, and it's good that I put whatever that plan was into place. I don't know if all the population of Gaza can be removed in 4 years, but any steps towards that are good. If 100,000 are sent away, good. 200,000, good. And part of the way to do it right now is to do it with building military pressure. The population should not be comfortable in Gaza, and that will be a part of encouraging them to leave. Yes, there is no future for Israel if Gazans remain in Gaza, if the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria remain there, and Israel needs to start realizing that and acting accordingly. I'm Razi Ginsburg on X. Thanks.
With that, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you tomorrow, and bye bye.
Bye bye.